it's Mike Epstein. Welcome to Speaking of the Arts. I'm so excited to share today's episode with you. We are featuring the amazing singer Stella Cole. Stella is getting ready to release her debut album on August 30th, and I had the opportunity to speak with her earlier this year, where she shared more about the recording process and creating the music. We also talked about Stella's earliest musical influences, how she got started as a professional singer in New York, and much more. Stella's CD release shows are on sale now, and you can see where she is performing at stellacole.net or on her social media channels. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and now please enjoy my conversation with Stella Cole. All right, Stella, well, welcome to Speaking of the Arts.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today. And I've had the pleasure of knowing you for 7 or 8 months now, and it's been really exciting to see all the amazing stuff that's happened in that short amount of time. And just by way of example, I mean, you've done a lot of performances. You've gotten to sing the national anthem at Madison Square Garden. You have officially recorded your debut album, which we're going to talk a lot about, which comes out this summer. The release date is August 30th, August 31st, the end of August.
I think August 30th is right. I should
August
definitely
30th.
know that.
And if possible, maybe, well, we can talk about this later. Maybe we'll even try to play some examples from the recording, or if not, we could always just include a couple of other examples that
Yeah.
are that people can listen to now. So, yeah, all good stuff. Tell us a little bit about your background. You've lived in New York for 3 years now, 2 years?
Like 2.5 years. So yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit of time. I both feel like I've lived here forever and can't remember a time before I lived here. And I also feel like I just got here like 3 months ago. And it's all still, New York just feels new all the time. Always another crazy thing waiting, I feel like in the city. It's
Yeah, but
wonderful.
hopefully that's kind of like how it always is. I mean,
Yeah, I
I,
think
yeah,
I think so. It's wonderful living here. I always dreamed of living here. I grew up in the Midwest in a small town in Illinois
yay,
called
Midwest.
Field. Yay, Midwest. We love it. Um, and yeah, always wanted to move to New York. Always dreamed of being on Broadway. I had like Broadway posters on my wall and everything growing up, and uh, a photo of like a map of Manhattan on my wall as a teenager. So yeah, living the dream. Can't complain.
That was always in the cards for you, clearly.
Hmm.
Because I was going to ask, I know, obviously the world now knows you as a really amazing singer, but I know too, acting is something you're really passionate about. So was there ever a point before you moved to New York that you were thinking about moving to LA, or why, or was it just always, I got to go to New York?
I thought about LA. I had never been to California actually. When I was deciding if I should move to New York or LA after college. Um, and people said maybe I should move to LA because I love nature and I love the outdoors so much, and there isn't so much of that in Manhattan. But I just decided I had just had a feeling about New York, so I decided to move here, and I'm very glad I did because I actually yeah I've been acting my whole life and singing my whole life, but mostly from a musical theater standpoint. So I never really realized that there was the possibility of doing the career that I'm doing now, I guess. That wasn't something anyone I knew was doing, like being a recording artist, being a singer, especially singing standards and singing this style of music. So I didn't know it was an option until I moved to New York and found this super vibrant community of, people my age and people of all ages really who love this music and play this music and keep it alive. So I'm so grateful I came here. Who knows what I'd be doing in LA? Taking a bunch of hikes and God knows what, not this.
Yeah, you still might end up there. Who knows?
It's true. I would be open to living in LA for a point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a New York fan, but LA I could do. I could do.
Right. I think you're just, you're such a good example of someone who was very intentional about what you set out to do. And even though it's only been like 2.5 years, the connections you've made and the heads that you've turned is really starting to have a compound effect. And I just wonder, when you first got to New York, because you probably didn't really know anybody, like how did you as you look back on those 2.5 years, like what were some of the things, what were like one or two things that you think back to and you can tell yourself, I'm so glad I did that because that really
Yeah.
made a difference. Like, was there anything like that that happened that is memorable?
For sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is I'm so glad that I decided, like when the quarantine started, I'm so glad that I decided to take a semester off of school, move back in with my parents, and sort of evaluate everything. I was studying at Northwestern outside of Chicago, and I double majored in theater and international relations and minored in German. Sort of random. I speak German, and I sort of thought I might want to go to law school eventually. Um, and so I didn't want to take theater classes over Zoom because that is a waste of money,
That's
frankly.
not fun. Yeah.
So I took some time off, and I had actually quit singing at one point during college, because of an experience with a teacher who sort of made me lose my confidence in my voice. So I had quit singing at that point, but I really missed it. And during COVID, I got bored and started posting these videos on social media. And so by the time I moved to New York, 2 years after the quarantine, in 2021, or maybe it was 22. Years confused me. Anyway, by
Yeah.
the time I had moved to New York, I had, somewhat of a following on social media, and I think that helped. Um, but in a way, it didn't help because I think having like a social media following and singing on the internet is really different than like being on the actual music scene in New York and, you know, um, having your peers sort of respect you as a musician in real life. So when I got to the city, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was walking dogs, to just make some money to just pay my rent while I sort of figured it out. I was a horrible dog walker. I would lose people's keys, and I forgot to feed someone's dog once. Like I really shouldn't be a dog walker ever again. Um, and
Okay.
I I was like I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm not good at this. How do I like become a singer? And I sort of said to myself, I walk past like hotels or restaurants all the time that have people singing standards. Like, I guess I'll just try to sing in a hotel lobby. So I started just sort of cold emailing or Instagram DMing like every hotel or restaurant in the city I could find, even ones without music. I was like, have you ever thought about having a jazz singer in the lobby? Wouldn't that be awesome? And almost none of them answered me, weirdly enough. But a few did. And the first one to answer was this restaurant in Brooklyn called Giovanni's. And he had me come sing some songs for him. That was my first time singing with a jazz trio.
That was like an audition, or you just,
Yeah, like I guess an audition. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I just came and sang with like the house band there, and
Yeah.
he gave me my first gig. It was not really any money at all, but I was like so thrilled at the end of the night that I was getting paid anything to sing. And so I just kind of kept going from there and like got a lot of different gigs at restaurants, and that turned into getting gigs at like smaller clubs in the city. And I guess just sort of met people through there, through just singing as much as I could everywhere I could, and then going to jam sessions as well. Benny Benack, who's a great trumpet player and
Yeah.
totally crazy person, reached out to me on Instagram. He was like one of the first people in the scene to be like, "Hey, I've seen your stuff. I really like it. Like, come sit in with me." So met some people through him, and that sort of happened a couple of other times with other lovely people and musicians, and here we are somehow, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I mean, that's just it though. From dog walker to Madison Square Garden. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is
the experience
crazy.
of having to hustle for yourself is so important. And the fact that
Yeah.
you were willing to reach out to everybody you could think of, and also, even places that were not doing music. I mean, because why not? Like, try
Yeah.
anything you can. It's so valuable. You're never gonna, you're always gonna build from that foundation of being hungry and hustling. And yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if I'll ever lose that. I still feel like it's this I have a similar mindset, even though I've accomplished so many like dream gigs already in the last year. It's insane. But I do have a lot of dreams, and I try to do everything I can to work toward them, I guess. All I can do is just keep singing and keep
Yeah.
cold
No, I
email.
mean, but that's really the key is is I think, the sort of the upper echelon of the superstar of superstar artists. I think one of the main differences between them and just about everybody else is that they continuously want to do something bigger, and
Yeah.
and through that motivation and those goals, they never lose that drive. It's like the process is almost more important than the outcome, or you know what I'm trying to say. It's like,
Oh, yeah, I totally feel that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
that hunger to do something bigger and to challenge yourself, and I haven't tried this. And I think as long as you have that, like you're only going to go forward. You're only going to get, you're only going to keep growing. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So you've kind of like established yourself, you're singing and everything. And then how did the idea for this current or this first album of yours come about? And like, kind of tell me about that process.
Yeah. People have been asking me to like make an album on the internet since I guess like 2020 when I started making these videos. And at first I was like, I'm not gonna make an album. Like, what do you mean? That's crazy. I had no idea how to do that. And so it took me a couple of years for sure to sort of figure out what kind of album I would even want to make, how you even go about that process. But it in the end of I think it was the end of 2022. Um, I I was a big fan of Samara Joy always. During COVID, when her first record or EP, when her first record came out, I was listening to it all the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, another person my age who's doing the type of thing that I want to be doing and singing the type of songs I want to be doing. So I'd always been a fan of hers. Loved her second record when it came out. And again, with this sort of cold email thing, I checked out who was producing her records, and I found Matt Pearson, who ended up producing my debut album that's coming out soon. And so I was like, no way is this guy going to answer me, but I'll just send him an email. And it looks like we have a bunch of mutual friends. And so I'll tell him that and ask if he wants to make my record. And he answered like the next day and was like, yeah, let's get on a Zoom. So that was so exciting for me because he's definitely worked on stuff that I really admire. And um, I feel like once I connected with him, that really actually got the ball rolling. Like having a very experienced producer who's made a lot of albums and could sort of walk me through what the process, what the timeline looks like. We Fundraising was the first thing, and I was so scared to ask for money on the internet because I never want to feel like I don't know, just a weird thing to do. Like my followers are all so lovely and I didn't want them to feel like I wanted something from them. But I finally sort of got up the courage to be like, "Hi guys, I'm making an album and I want to release it. I don't want to I didn't want to work with a label who would like give me the money and then own the album. I wanted to own my first record. That was really important to me. So I was like, "Hey guys, I want to own my own record and so I'm trying to make some money. If you want to donate $5, that would be great." And we raised like $35,000 in maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks or something. It was insane.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah. I was like, whoa, okay, that's crazy. And just immediately, like, people were donating, like, donations of like $5,000 from people I had never, like, his names I had never heard before. And it was just insane to feel that, like, outpour of support from the internet thing because you can have these millions of likes and views and followers and whatever, but it's hard like for that to translate into realizing that's like a million real actual people who saw your work. So
right,
that was
right.
pretty amazing.
It's amazing. It's proof of concept. It's like
Yeah.
people want to support you. They want to give you money to make this happen.
Yeah, exactly. So we recorded it in the summer of 2023 after like 7 months of Matt and I going back and forth of the track list. Like I'm such a perfectionist and I was so wanted it to be like the perfect, I don't know. And I do feel that I chose really well. Still a year, like almost a year later, not a year later, so 7 months later, I'm
Yeah,
still very content with the songs that we chose. And Matt was definitely extremely helpful on that front. So we got a band together. Some of the songs are with a trio led by Ben Patterson, and some of the songs are trio plus an 8-piece like little mini orchestra led by Alan Broadbent, who also did the arrangements for those tunes. So I couldn't be more excited for it to come out in August. I'm so impatient. I just want it to be out and for everyone to be able to hear it yesterday.
Yeah.
But I can't wait. I feel like it's really surprised me how many people support me without having ever heard really like me sing a full song. Like they've heard all these 45-second clips of me on the internet. So I'm excited to sort of deepen the relationship and connection that I have with people through, yeah, them hearing just more of my work.
Yeah.
Dear, I thought I'd drop a line. The weather's cool, the folks are fine. I'm in bed each night at 9. P.S. I love you.
I'm just curious if you have any sort of mentors or teachers that have kind of inspired you on your journey that maybe you're still in touch with. Because I before I got into the music business side of the music industry, I was a drummer and wanted to be a performer, and I'm very close to my teacher, going all the way back to my freshman year in high school.
Oh,
um, and he's actually a professional drummer in New York City. Jason Tiemann, shout out to Jason.
oh,
But
cute.
I just think about that as being really lucky to have had that person in my corner to really sort of nurture me, but also it's transcended the teacher-student relationship, because I don't go to him for lessons anymore, but he's somebody that I can always go to for advice or just anything, right? I
Yeah.
feel so lucky that I've had that. Are there anybody sort of in your wheelhouse that you have has inspired you in that way that you can?
Yeah, for sure. I think my voice teacher is definitely the first person that comes to mind. Her name is Joan Lader. She's the most wonderful person in the world, and I love her so much. And I really don't think I'd have a career at all without her. I
Yeah, and
started
let's just
studying.
like make sure people know who that is. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
I you're right. I'll say. She's amazing. She's the only voice teacher who's ever won a Tony Award for being a voice teacher. They like made a special Tony for her, which is nice.
wow.
Um, she sort of keeps all the voices of Broadway running constantly. Um,
Hugh
she,
Jackman,
yeah, Hugh
Madonna,
Jackman, Madonna,
just,
yeah,
you know, nobody
Cynthia
in particular,
Erivo.
but
Yeah, nobody in particular. She sort of worked with everybody. Yeah, like Patti LuPone, Kristen Chenoweth, like,
yeah,
um,
good for you for
yeah,
surrounding yourself in good company with such a great teacher.
my goodness, yeah. Well, I first started studying with her during the pandemic, and she doesn't really take on a lot of new students, especially sort of a random college student who had um I had never played a gig or been in a professional theater role in my life, but she said she sort of heard something and saw something there, and we sort of immediately got along really well. And I was just expecting to do a couple lessons with her for this specific vocal problem I had been having, and she kept every week saying like, okay, what time next week? And I was like, what again? Surely this is going to be the last lesson. Like, surely she's busy with Madonna and Hugh Jackman or
Right.
something. um but yeah, she's been such an important figure, like you said, not just for transforming my voice completely, which she completely has. She's just a genius, top of her field. There's nobody better, I think. um but also in terms of the mentorship thing, it's such a vulnerable relationship between a singer and a voice teacher, or a musician and a teacher of any kind.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, her and her family sort of followed along with whatever I'm doing career wise through social media. And like I was singing at the Kennedy Center in January, and uh, she connected me with a different voice teacher who is sort of more of like my jazz teacher, I guess you'd say. And they sent me a selfie. They were teaching at Young Arts together, doing a master class together, and they were like, thinking of you, go Kennedy Center, you're a star. And it made me cry, like it made me teary-eyed. um it means so much to have her support. And yeah, my other voice teacher is Latanya Hall. She's also so wonderful. So yeah, Joan
Nice.
Later.
Yeah, that's amazing. I forgot to ask you a question earlier that I wanted to go back to before we
Yeah.
kind of got to you moving to New York and everything. Do you have what is like your earliest memory of being really blown away with music or performing or both? Like,
Mm,
because there's a few that I have in my mind that I still think about to this day that give me goosebumps. And one of them, I was in sixth grade, so I was about 11 years old. And
mhm,
at the time, my family was living in Maryland, so my school got to go to a school performance at the Kennedy Center. You just
Oh,
reminded me of it.
nice.
So we saw the National Symphony do a school performance, and they performed just real basic school rep, like they probably did when Johnny Comes Marching Home Again and Peter and the Wolf and all those really classic songs for full orchestra.
Mhm.
And the reason it's so memorable to me is because I remember just being completely transfixed with the sound of the orchestra. And at the same time, kind of like looking over to my friends and realizing it was not having the same effect on them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's such a important memory to me because it's like really definitive. It's like, no, for some reason, this whole idea of live music and art is really resonating with me in a way that it wasn't with my peers. Do you have
Mm.
any memories like that?
Definitely mine are less live music actually and more mm, music that I saw through like old movie musicals. I think just because I was living in Springfield, Illinois. I mean, there were just wasn't a ton of live music going on around there, and my parents would take me to see like touring productions of shows. We'd drive to like St. Louis or Chicago and see those. But first, it was definitely the movie musicals. I grew up on, Singing in the Rain and Mary Poppins, Meet Me in St. Louis, Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music, all still my favorite movies to this day. And my parents tell me that the first time I watched The Wizard of Oz, specifically, I was 3 years old, and I just, like you said, sat completely still and was just like so overwhelmed by it in a way that I guess most 3-year-olds wouldn't be, probably.
No, I've got
Um,
two little kids, and that is
yeah,
absolutely correct.
yeah, exactly. It's hard to get them to sit still, but
It's very
I
impressive.
did.
Yeah.
And I've always been pretty obsessive about music and I guess and was even as a 3-year-old and I watched that movie every single day. Like would have watched it twice a day and begged to, I guess. Um
The Wizard of Oz.
yeah, The Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz for like a year. And then I moved on to I think after that it was Mary Poppins and like as a 4 or 5-year-old like had the movie memorized, would say the lines along with everyone. Like it's so weird. Like my home videos are so weird. They're not me like riding a bike or anything. It's me like performing full movie musicals for my parents. So yeah, I think not much has changed in that aspect because I'm still obsessed with those movies and they still like are the thing that inspires me the most probably. So
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Like at such a young age too. I mean, we know you can sing. Does there, and your family, are there other musicians? Like, where does this come from in your family? Do you have anybody?
no, my parents aren't really musical at all. My dad like used to play a tiny bit of guitar to like sing me lullabies, which is so sweet.
Yeah.
Um, but he doesn't really know how to play the guitar. Like he just sort of played a couple chords. I'd say
Right.
that's the most musical my family really gets. My grandma sings in church choir and my aunt like plays the organ for their church. That's sort of the extent of it. So yeah, I don't know where it came from. I guess I watched too much I listened to too many albums of the Great American Songbook growing up, and it just sort of
It's stuck.
infiltrated my brain and
Yeah.
psyche. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always, for me, it was always really obvious because my grandma, she was actually an opera singer.
Oh,
And
cool.
her father, so my great grandfather, was a musician and also a visual artist. He was at one point concert master of the Radio City Music Hall. So that whole side of my family, it's there. And my grandma had it. And then later in life, I found out one of her uncles, so it must have been that great grandfather's brother, one of his brothers, was a big band drummer during the swing era.
Wow, cool.
And I remember when I found that out, I was so excited, but I was also just so it's like, Grandma, you're just now telling me this,
Yeah,
I've been
absolutely.
like trying to do this, since I was like 13. Anyway. that was such
Yeah,
a revelation to me that like I had a relative at the height of that time period for that music.
wow, it's
Apparently he
amazing.
wasn't a really nice guy because she referred to him as Uncle Rat. So
Oh no.
could be
Well,
why
at
I
least
never heard
Uncle
about
Rat
him.
could drum. That's funny. That's
Yeah,
funny. Cool.
interesting. So that
Yeah.
spark for you really started organically. I mean, really from seeing those musicals, those movies, and just being completely starstruck.
Yeah. I feel like without my parents showing me those movies, like it just wouldn't have been something I even knew existed. I feel like that was the sort of deal for my parents. Like they both grew up in really small towns in Illinois, and they just weren't exposed to so much like music. They had like their couple of CDs their parents had, but I think that wasn't the focus. Probably I think sort
Yeah,
of getting by was the focus, and I feel like I'm the first generation in my family on either side that's sort of, I guess, privileged enough to have been able to be like, okay, what do I want to do? Let me follow my passions. I feel like I without my parents' encouragement, I again wouldn't be doing this. My mentors and the people who are close to me have been so important in my journey to getting where I am now, I guess. Because in high school, I mean, I was so hesitant to study theater or anything artistic. I always made really good grades in school, so I was like, I need to do law school, or like I need to try to go to med school. I like fainted the sight of blood. I don't know why I thought I could be a doctor, but I was like, I need to go do something that's like definite and I'm
yeah.
smart, like I can do that. And they were like, you really love this thing though. Like we want you to be able to follow your passions in a way we really couldn't. So if they wouldn't have encouraged me, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so lucky to have that kind of encouragement from my parents. I know not everyone is that lucky. So
Moon River, wider than a mile. I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way.
Why do you think the music you're singing, and there's other artists right now who are singing similar repertoire, but why do you think this is having, in some ways, such a moment, if you will? Like why? And maybe there's no answer to this question, but the support you've seen online, and let's be completely realistic, in person at your shows, uh,
yeah,
I would be remiss if I didn't say that you've sold out every show you've done since we've been working together. Uh,
yeah,
I
crazy.
just wonder, I'm thrilled for you and I'm thrilled for the music and the history of the
Yeah.
music, but I don't know, is there anything you can think of that speaks to this moment in time?
Yeah.
Could be why it's really resonating with so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I started realizing it was resonating with people in COVID when I started posting these videos online. And before that, I had been sort of convinced at college that there wasn't really an audience for this music anymore, and that even on Broadway, this style of singing was like not what anyone wanted to hear. Um, and when I started getting the kind of response that I did on social media, it left me sort of asking the same question, like, wow, this does connect people. And I guess I don't really have a great answer for it, but what I can say is that all of the people who follow me, like the comment I get the most often is like, wow, this was so comforting. I've had such an awful day, or I recently lost a family member, or I've just been in a really hard couple of months, and like your video sort of stopped me in my tracks and like made me just like forget all of that for a second. And I think that's the effect this music has always had on me. This sort of like extreme comfort. And um it's the world is so fast now and so stressful, and I think a lot of music is sort of made to match that like short attention span, um fast track. Everybody doesn't have time to listen to a whole 4 minute song, so let's make it a 2 minute track with all the same words, and I think
Right.
that is sort of exhausting, just as everyday life is exhausting. And I think this music provides, not just for me, but from anyone who sings in this genre, it provides a bit of a break from just that, like the pressures of the modern world, I guess. I think it is nostalgic for people, and that's part of it, but I don't think that's all of it, because there are a lot of young people who follow me, and it feels nostalgic, but like they don't know, they've never heard of Sarah Vaughan, probably. They've never heard of a lot of the like legends of this music before. A lot of them like think that I wrote Misty. Like they've never heard of it, so they can't actually be nostalgic for it, but just like the vibe of the music, I think gives them um this sort of, yeah, this nostalgia for an era they don't even really know much about. So I think
You
that's,
answered that so well and eloquently, and I just had a incoming call that I had to mute. I'm sorry about that.
no, don't
Um,
worry, I didn't notice.
you could see how far you can take the whole idea that some of your younger fans think that you've wrote some of these songs, and
Yeah,
you know, it,
exactly. It's like, no, actually, I mean, I wish I was that good of a songwriter. Maybe someday, but
but
no,
it
that's,
also just, it's I think such a compliment to your ability to interpret them, that they are resonating with younger people who have not heard where they've come from, or who have not had a chance to listen to all those records and everything like that, and live with them for a while, is what I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, thanks again for taking the time.
Of course, great to talk to you.
Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world